Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Clinton, and today I want to talk about a challenge that sits in the heart of America's national security and industrial strength. The U.S. Navy is falling behind in shipbuilding, facing aging infrastructure and a shrinking workforce and production delays that results in thousands of operational days lost. At the same time, our global competitors are rapidly expanding their shipbuilding capacity. In this Tribe Talk, I'd like to share an approach to rebuilding America's naval advantage, and the one that modernizes our shipyards, revive our workforce, and restores the industrial engines we rely on to become masters of the sea. Here, I would like to break down the core elements of the wicked problem that we are facing in America's naval shipbuilding enterprise. First, the problem is simple yet profound. Our Navy is struggling to build and maintain ships on the time due to outdated infrastructure, workforce shortages, and an inefficient procurement system. This matters because these delays weaken fleet readiness and undermine our ability to deter rising global competitors. At the root of this crisis are decades of underinvestment in shipyards, aging facilities, and a workforce pipeline that can't keep up with modern needs. However, the solution isn't about technology. It is the combination of automation and workforce development working together. From there, we move into execution change through strong partnership and policy reforms. And we must also manage resistance by building capabilities and leadership capacity. Ultimately, this is about rebuilding America's naval strength together and ensuring that we must remain the dominant maritime power of the future. The Navy is experiencing a shipbuilding crisis driven by three significant issues: outdated infrastructures, severe workforce shortages, and an acquisition system that is too slow and fragmented to support modern demands. Across the naval enterprise, many shipyards still rely on aging facilities, inefficient layouts, and legacy processes that cannot keep pace with today's technological and operational requirements. At the same time, the Navy is struggling to build and maintain a skilled workforce. Critical trades like welding, machining, and digital engineering lacks a strong enough pipeline, leaving shipyards without the talent they need to operate effectively or adopt new technologies. Layered on top of this is an acquisition system that often lacks stability and predictability. Short-term funding cycles, complex contracting processes, and overlapping oversight structures make it difficult for shipyards to plan, invest, and innovate over the long term. Together, these challenges create systematic problems that slows productions, limits modernization, and ultimately undermines the Navy's ability to maintain the readiness and capability expected of a global maritime power. So, why does this matter? Well, it's a national security concern. Chronic delays across the shipbuilding industries are directly weakening fleet readiness. When ships take longer to build and longer to repair, the Navy loses operational time. Uh, as this limits deployment flexibility, straining existing platforms, and reduces the Navy's ability to respond to emergent threats. Also, the crisis is unfolding at the same time our adversaries are rapidly expanding their industrial capacity. China's shipbuilding sector is now significantly larger than ours, which widens the maritime gap and places the long-term U.S. deterrence at risk. This is not just a matter of number, but it is about industrial momentum and strategic influences, and the United States is currently losing ground. We are also confronting a severe labor shortage across shipbuilding workforce. Skilled trades such as welding, pipe fitting, machining, and digital engineering are experiencing a shortage of workers entering the pipeline, which is not keeping up with demand. This shortage demonstrates that slow production creates a compounding effect, making modernization even more challenging. Compounding all of this is the condition of our shipyards. Many facilities are outdated and inefficient, creating bottlenecks, reworks, and extended build times. On the financial aspect, rising costs and unstable procurement cycles place additional pressures on federal resources. When budget fluctuates from year to year, shipyards cannot make long-term investments, leading to hiring surges, layoffs, and an inconsistent production cycle. which undermines the conditions that weakens the entire regional economies built around naval shipbuilding. These factors altogether shows us that this crisis matters because it affects not only naval readiness, but also America's stabilities and America's long-term ability to compete and deter in a rapidly changing global environment. Across the country, the Navy's four public shipyards operate with outdated infrastructures, aging facilities, and inefficient layout. Many of these shipyards still rely on obsolete equipment and physical configurations that slows down work, increase travel time for materials and workers, and limit overall productivity. These conditions directly delay maintenance and modernization efforts that the fleet depends on. The reality of America's naval infrastructure today and why it becomes a strategic vulnerability. If you look to your left, you can see a long-term decline in U.S. shipbuilding output. Both commercial and naval productions have trended downward for decades, and even brief periods of investment, such as during the Reagan administration, were insufficient to reverse the overall decline. That means fewer ships deliver, slower production cycle, in a shrinking industrial base. On the right of the map, we see the map highlighted another critical constraint. The Navy relies on just four public shipyards to maintain the entire nuclear fleet. These facilities, like Puget Sound, Pearl Harbor, Portsmouth, and Norfolk, operate with a limited number of dry docks, most of which are decades old and already stretched to capacity. Every submarine and carrier overhaul must compete for the same scarce infrastructure. Taken together, this decline in shipbuilding output and the bottlenecks in maintenance capacity create a readiness challenge. At the time when global maritime uh, competition is accelerating, the United States is operating with an aging, overburdened shipyard ecosystem that was built for a different era. That is the structural gap we need to address if we want a Navy capable of meeting today's demand. Well, to reverse the U.S. Navy's shipbuilding decline and rebuild America's naval strength, we must first modernize the shipyard through automation and digital technologies. We see the same calls for integrating robotics, digital twins, AI-driven scheduling, and real-time data systems so that shipyards can operate with the speed and precision required in modern naval production. These tools help reduce rework, optimize workflows, and give planners the insight needed to avoid bottlenecks. We must also build and expand a strong workforce pipeline. The Navy cannot modernize without people trained to use advanced tools. That means increasing apprenticeships, strengthening technical training programs, and preparing the next generation of welders, machinists, digital technicians, and systems engineers. The next solution is to reform procurement and stabilize long-term funding. Shipbuilding cannot succeed on a year-to-year basis due to uncertainty. Multi-year procurements, streamlining contracting, and predictable demand signals are essential for shipyards to invest in automation, training, and infrastructure. Then we need to strengthen public-private partnership and innovation ecosystem. The references that I've approached emphasize collaboration with private shipyards, defense contractors, and technology firms. These industry partners bring expertise in automation, advanced manufacturing, and a workforce system that the Navy can leverage to speed up modernization. We must also upgrade and rebuild the physical shipyard infrastructure. According to SIOP, they have identified outdated layouts, aging dry docks, and obsolete equipment barriers to efficiency. Modernizing the physical environment to enable new technologies to function correctly and increase shipyard throughput. And finally, none of this succeeds without modernizing organizational culture and leadership. A risk-averse culture slows innovation. To execute change effectively, leaders must encourage pilot programs, reward innovation, and promote cross-organizational cooperation. Together, these solutions form an integrated blueprint that addresses every major root causes, including technology, people, policy, infrastructure, and leadership, creating the foundation for a modern U.S. shipbuilding enterprise. Well, you can say, how can we execute the modernization plan and turn these solutions into real measurable changes across the Navy's shipbuilding enterprise? First, we need to launch targeted pilot programs in selected shipyards. This emphasizes the modernization must begin small through testing digital twins, robotics, automated materials handling, and AI-driven scheduling tools before scaling them Navy-wide. These pilots help validate the technology, identify early challenges, and build confidence among shipyard leadership and the workforce. Next, we need to expand the workforce pipeline because technology only works if people know how to use it. This means partnering with community colleges, technical schools, and apprenticeship programs to train the next generation of shipbuilders. Cross-training existing worker is just as important, especially as digital systems and robotics become central to daily operation. Next, significant action is to stabilize procurement. The document that I've referenced repeatedly highlight that inconsistent short-term funding undermines long-term planning. Moving towards multi-year procurement and streamlining acquisition process gives shipyards the predictability they need to invest in new tools, hire workers, and commit to modernization. We must also accelerate infrastructure upgrade, especially under the shipyard infrastructure optimization plan. Many shipyards still operate with outdated layouts and aging equipment. By redesigning these physical spaces and replacing obsolete machinery, we create an environment that enables advanced technologies to operate at scale. Another critical piece is strengthening governance. Our oversight across shipbuilding is currently fragmented, especially unified leadership, clear accountability, and transparent progress tracking across NAVSEA and shipyards ensures modernization efforts stays coordinated and on schedule. Finally, modernization cannot happen in isolation. We need to build a strong public-private partnership that build in expertise from industry automation companies, advanced manufacturer, and technology innovators. These collaborations allows the Navy to leverage proven best practices and accelerate the adoption of emerging technologies. Together, these actions create a clear roadmap for executing change, one that integrates technology, people, infrastructure, and leadership to transform America's shipbuilding enterprise. Well, there are two essential components of successful modernization: managing resistance and measuring impact. One of them is clear. Modernization only works if people believe in it. Managing resistance begins with effective communication and achieving early wins. Pilot program will allow us to demonstrate tangible improvements in workforce efficiency and safety. Sharing these results early will help build trust, reduce skepticism, and show that modernization is not just another initiative, but something that makes shipyards more effective. The next step would be to increase transparency. Worker needs to understand why these changes are happening. Dashboards, progress updates, and open communications help create buy-ins and ensure workforce feel included, not left behind. And because shipbuilding is so complex, interdependent process, creating cross-functional working groups that brings together engineers, operational workers, contractors, and workforce development workers to ensure everyone is aligned around modernization. On the quantitative side, we need to ensure that progress is both visible and measurable. This involves monitoring workforce readiness by completing training, certification, and apprenticeship programs. It also means tracking infrastructure modernization through facilities upgrades and equipment readiness and layout improvements that is tied to SIOP. Finally, the procurement stability is a clear indicator of progress, tracking contract predictability, backlog reduction, and multi-year planning alignment that shows whether the Navy is creating a sustained environment that shipyard needs to modernize. Together, managing resistance and measuring impact ensures that modernization doesn't just start, but also scales, sustain, and deliver meaningful changes across the shipbuilding enterprise. As we come to a close, the Navy's shipbuilding crisis is not the result of one's failure. It is a systemic challenge that spans the entire infrastructure, workforce technology, and procurement. And because the problem is interconnected, the solution must also be interconnected as well. The path forward is through modernization. Automation, digital tools, and upgraded facility will form the backbone of a shipbuilding enterprise that can actually meet the demand of global maritime power. But even the best technology won't move the needle without a workforce that is trained, empowered, and ready for the future. Long-term investment in talent will ultimately determine whether modernization will succeed. Most importantly, procurement reforms and strong public-private partnership can only modernize when they have stable, predictable demand and access to innovation from industry leaders. And these partnerships are where new ideas, advanced manufacturing methods, and solutions come to light. Rebuilding America's shipbuilding capability is at its core a leadership challenge. It will require vision, collaboration, and sustained commitment across the entire ecosystem, from Navy leadership and policymakers to industry teams and the American workforce. If we were to get this right, we will not only fix shipyards, we will restore our maritime advantage, strengthen national security, and ensure the United States remain the world's leading naval power. And the future starts with the decision we choose to make today. And here are the references. Thank you so much for listening to my tribe talk. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening.